On today's programme, some tips on air travel, a really useful guide to catching a flight. And we show you how to read timetables. Once you've gotten used to reading one, they're all very similar. And some information about your memory. How does it work and how do we make it better?
Memory is a wonderful thing. Because we're human, not machines, we all remember things differently and in different ways. Think about songs. Some people remember the lyrics, others the tune, and other people remember where they were the first time they heard a particular song. Some people might remember the video of the song, but not the song itself. And why do people remember vivid details from when they were young, but nothing about what they had for lunch yesterday? Well, if there's one thing constant about memory, it's that all of our memories are different. Take a look at this and find out more about how memory works.
If you are going to classes to improve your reading and writing, you want to be able to remember new information. There are tricks and techniques to help us remember. Ever since she was at school, Bridget O'Connor has found it difficult to remember how to spell certain words. But it wasn't until she was an adult that she discovered why.
I discovered about 10 years ago, I was actually listening to Gay Byrne. He used to have a radio programme on, and he had somebody on speaking about dyslexia. And straight away I said, God, that's what's wrong with me. I could always read, but I could never spell. I could never spell. So I went about getting myself assessed.
Bridget was diagnosed as having dyslexia by the Dyslexia Association of Ireland.
It was just like a revelation for me because it just made such a difference to me. With confidence-wise, because I knew, well, it's not my fault that I have this problem, you know.
Dyslexia is only one of the reasons someone might have difficulty with remembering words. As Bill Dawes of Dublin City University explains, we all use different methods to take information into our brains and remember it.
Well, people have different preferred ways of learning things, of storing things. Some people like to do it, they hear it, they speak it better. Some people actually see things better. Some people are very logical. They like to code things in numbers and so forth. Some people like them in linguistic forms. Some people are great at movement and bodily stuff.
Bridget finds it difficult to remember spellings, so she has learned techniques that work for her.
Well, I find what works for me best is actually combining action. I mean, actually writing the word down. The actual action of doing it as well as remembering it seems to help me.
Bridget found that keeping a diary also helped her to remember spellings.
So I would have been writing down, like, you know, I go up the stairs, I take the Hoover out, I go into the kitchen, you know, so using the words like kitchen and stairs. They're only small words, but there would be words that I would have problems with. I would, you know, mix the letters around. But I found, you know, I was confident about writing those words down because I had been writing them over and over and over again.
Bridget also uses action to help her remember phone numbers.
For to trigger the memory back of the number, if I actually do the action, the dialing action, I can get the number will come back to me, you know. And say even remembering my own mobile number would have been actually to do it in a few times into my phone, you know, and then it just stuck.
The first thing I'd say about helping yourself remember is figure out what it is that you're having trouble remembering. And then you do something to make that stand out for you, make that your own.
Bridget's tutor at the Dublin Adult Learning Centre gave her a good tip for remembering people's names.
She always says, you know, make the connection. You know, if you can make a connection when you hear somebody's name or whatever, and say you connected with somebody you know, or connected to a song or something, you know, and these are the things that I do. These are the little tricks that I use.
One way of helping ourselves to remember is to use drawings. For example, if you want to remember the different spellings of a pear that you eat and a pair of socks.
Pear, how about eat a pear? But we've now got eat a pear. We've got the visual thing, we got the letters. So you've got all those connections there. And the pair of socks hanging on the line. A pear in the air. And again, you're using, in this case, the visual stuff. The letters are the same. You're going to remember that. But make it fun. Play with it. Again, it forces it in there, and it's yours.
Memory and learning go together. Once you are able to remember something, you've learned it. But you need to find the tricks and techniques that work best for you.
I read a great quote one time, and I always quote it, you know. The brain is like a parachute. It only works when it's open.
Well, our guests today are Anne Ryle from Tralee, who went back to education 5 years ago, and we're also joined by Niamh Geoghegan, a projects coordinator in the field of learning. And you find that your daughter had some very good advice on learning and memory tricks as well, didn't she?
Of course she did. My daughter's name is Jessica, and Jessica's 13. And I was doing a little piece about Halloween, you know, writing a little essay about Halloween and how I remembered Halloween as a child.
Yeah, very different, I'd say.
Very, very different. Yeah. And I said to her, Jessica, how would I spell Halloween? And she said, but Mum, she said, what's the point in I telling you how to spell Halloween? And I said, well, you know, it makes it easier for me. So she said, no. She said, look up your dictionary. And she said, when you learn how to spell it yourself, it's something you'll always remember. So
she's a good teacher, isn't she?
And that's how I always get my dictionary for my bigger words.
There was a moment, Anne, a few years ago when you decided to go back to education, wasn't there? What happened?
I was listening to Kerry local radio, and it said that there was an adult education in Tralee, which I wasn't familiar with. Now,
first you heard of it?
First I've heard of it, and I'm Tralee all my life. So I said, you know, I just kind of jotted down the number. I discussed it with my husband, Pat, and he said to me that he would be there if I wanted to go back, and that he would be there for Jessie and for Martin, my brother, that I also look after.
Did he know it was something maybe at the back of your mind you might have been interested in?
Well, no.
Or that there were difficulties?
He never knew there was difficulties. I think it was then that I broke the block of ice.
Yeah.
It was then.
Was that a huge relief for you?
It was, because all my life it was a skeleton that was inside in the cupboard.
Yeah.
And when a person can't read and write, you will get your own ways around hiding it.
Of hiding it. There are tricks.
There's tricks.
And so nobody, even if they're living with you, they mightn't even guess.
They would never know.
And now, 5 years down the road, you have big ambitions. I heard
big.
that somebody told me that you have a plan to write to the Pope.
Yes.
What's that about?
Yes. The Pope, to me, is one of the most important people in the world.
Yeah.
And I know that we have got good government people out there and people that run our own country. But I think the Pope, to me, is the nearest that we'll ever get to God.
What do you want to say to him?
I would like to tell him that I'm an adult, and that I went back to adult education, and that I always had that ambition to be able to write to someone that was so important.
I see.
And to just tell him how far I've come with it, and that, and hopefully to get a response.
Yeah.
At some
and
point.
that would be a nice achievement, wouldn't it?
It would be a nice achievement, yes.
What do you think, Niamh, about Anna's talking about goals there when you're learning, and that would be a goal for her to write that letter now, 5 years down the road after taking that first step. Is it important to have goals when you're learning?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have goals. I think without goals, it's really hard to actually be focused and to achieve anything. You know, when you actually have a goal set for yourself, then for anybody, you know, then you can actually get one thing done, and it often gives you more energy to do more things. It can be very big. If you want to take on some challenges, I suppose it's sometimes things are very big or grand. You don't know where to start. So if you make something very simple, one thing to go with, then from there.
Well, Anne's goal is an ambitious one, but do you think people generally, would you advise them to have smaller goals?
Yeah, I think I think big goals or small goals, whatever gets you going, I think is really the best way to do it. You know, like you can pick a goal from just going to the shop every day in the week, or you know, whatever the goal is. I think once you know that if you have it in your routine or have it as an aim and ambition to get to, then it gets you going and it makes you achieve things that otherwise you wouldn't do because you've no reason to actually do it, you know.
Well, you've achieved a lot recently, Anne. Growing up with a disability, being born with one hand, did that cause you to view life differently, do you think?
I think it was a very, very daunting experience for me.
Was it?
As a child. As a person today with a disability, you can sail through life because there is so much help out there. And like that, when you're talking about, we say, schools, when children are together and they see a child with a disability going into their class, this is 2007, and the way I look at it is that with every classroom, you know, they should have, if a child has a disability, to interact with the people that don't have a disability, boosts the child's confidence.
Right.
I didn't have that in the 50s. I didn't have that when I was going to school.
We've come a long way as a society.
Of a
have we now,
society,
in-
I think it's brilliant that
Good.
people with disabilities are respected in a better standard of life now.
And in a practical sense, life is
Of
easier now
course.
too, isn't it?
It is. I mean, like, it's, you know, for me now
Yeah.
it is. I mean, like, you know, I mean, there's people, I might be talking to people in town, I might meet someone for the first time, and I might meet that person again 8 weeks after, and they might never know that I have a disability, and I have to mention it. Some people will pick it up straight away, and some people are different. Some
Yeah.
people would say, God, I never knew that, you know?
And again, on practical things, you took a flight to
I
be here
did.
today now, didn't you? You
I
flew
did.
up from Tralee.
I flew up from Tralee, and
How was that?
It was
dealing with
wonderful.
it? Yeah.
It was wonderful, you know. You know, it was lovely. My niece dropped me off, Maria, and she said she was going there, so she dropped me off, and I got into the airport, and you know, I felt good.
Did you feel like you were going on holidays?
No, I knew I was coming in business. You know.